Welcome back. I'm Mike, and this is My Car's Shop. Bet you didn't know that, did you? Or maybe you did. Well, anyway, today we're back on the 26 Oakland project. We're going to put the front wheels on the car temporarily and move the car forward and get the back. Well, we're just going to do some stuff. So why don't you watch the show intro and we'll get right after it, just in 30 seconds, right on the other side. Let's do this. We can, really.
Working out of a 100-year-old refurbished barn, bringing 35 years of experience to projects considered beyond repair. Vision, creativity, and problem solving are essential tools in this place. Watch as we transform junk into polished metal miracles. This is My Car's Shop.
First thing I want to mention while you're here is if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do that right now. Just down in the corner, there's a little MKS logo. You can just click that, hit subscribe, and then go over and hit that bell so you can receive notifications. That would really help everybody out a lot if you would do that. I know there's a lot of people who watch the channel who aren't subscribed, and I don't think realize the benefit there is to doing that and how that's going to benefit the entire channel once we get a little further along here. So thank you for considering that. Now, enough of me yakking. Let's get into the 26 Oakland project. As I mentioned, we're going to put the front wheels on temporarily, get the car down, move it forward, we're going to get the back wheels off so that Dad can start stripping those down and get those ready. We're not going to be putting the polyurethane on the wood yet. I got thinking about it, and these two wheels have turned out really nice and they match, but I want to be sure the back wheels match in case we need to do any color tweaking on those before we put the urethane on. So we're going to hold off on that just for a little bit. So in some ways this episode is going to be some lather, rinse, and repeat, but there's also a few other things we're going to start looking at and some decisions that we need to make once Dad gets here. So he'll be here soon. We'll be getting on this project, and let's just do this. So you know what they say about the best laid plans of mice and men. Now, I guess I don't know what plans mice have, but I know the plans the men had for today, and things have not gone according to that plan. So we got the rim and tire off, and we got the nut off, and have discovered that the wheels are seized on to the axle and don't want to let go, which means they haven't been off for 75, 80, 90, 95 years. So we have an issue to get these off. There's several ways we can do it. I called Wayne, got his input on it. The first thing you don't want to ever do with a wooden spoke wheel is put heat in here. That's a bad thing, because wooden wheel, heat, fire, oh, not good at all. So we tried several things. We put a little pressure on the brake drum, trying to pry it away from the backing plate a little bit. We put the nut on here and tapped on it while pulling on the wheel. Nothing is working, and we don't want to get carried away. So we don't want to bend anything. We obviously don't want to damage the wooden spoke wheel. So we have a couple of options. One, we can just get the car running, put the nuts on loosely, and they might come loose. So that's one way to do it. Obviously, we're not going to drive it from here to California that way, but just drive it around a little bit and see if they happen to come loose. So that's an option, maybe not the best. Pardon my arm. Another option is to get a nut that is the size of this, which is about 2 3/4 fine thread, that would thread onto here and make ourselves a bolt puller. So it would be thread on with a bolt that threads in here, and so it would pull the wheel off. And they make a tool like that as well, but we can make one or buy one. The tool is about $300 to do that. That still doesn't guarantee that we're going to get it off of there. The worst case scenario is to go ahead and pull the cover off the rear end, pull the axles out, and take the wheel and the axle out as an assembly, and then take it somewhere and get the axle pressed out. We're leaning towards making/buying the tool. We'll try that first, but we're guessing these have maybe been off once in the car's life, because it's not something you normally take off. So remember that you can change a flat tire on a car like this without ever touching this wheel. So the only reason this wheel would have been off was, one, we're guessing when Grandpa painted it, he probably didn't do it on the car, but maybe he did. Number two would be if there was an axle bearing that had an issue, and that axle bearing had to be replaced. The third case scenario, and you might be able to do this without taking it off, would be to replace the brake band. And I think that has been replaced, because it looks in pretty good shape. So we don't know, but we know it's been sitting for 75 years like this. So at a minimum, that's what we need to deal with. So that's the joy of working on an old car like this. You just don't know what roadblocks you're going to hit and what's going to slow you down. And well, if it was easy, anybody would do it, right? So that's why we do it. And so, times two, we have the issue on this side as well. So we're definitely going to have to do something, because neither one came off. As I said, we didn't want to get too aggressive. So there you go. So neither of the rear wheels will come off of the axle, and we'll go from there and figure out what's the best way to do this. We've got time. It's certainly not the stopping factor in moving forward on the project. So little by little, we'll get there. Okay, so we're moving on to other things, and what Dad's doing right now is taking the oil lines off so that we can blow those out and make sure those oil passages are clear. So we're moving forward on getting ready to put the oil pan on, obviously, and we just want to make sure that none of this oil in the lines has turned to shellac. So carefully we will do that and get those off of there and get everything cleaned out and make sure that the engine is ready to be primed once the oil pan is on.
It's a lot of fitting in there. Goes up into the head.
I was going to say, do I need to go hold a wrench on the top? So we got the one line out, and I just blew on it with my mouth, and it's good. So we're not going to do anything more than that. I thought about running solvents through it, but I think we're better to leave it alone. And there's nothing shellacky in there, so I think we're golden. But this is the line that feeds from the oil pump back to the rear main bearing, and then over to the oil pressure, or to the oil filter and oil pressure gauge. So just to be safe, I think it was a good idea to pull these off, but there's zero signs of shellac inside of there at all. So far the only shellacking we found in any of the oil lines is what was in the timing chain feed that we blew out, I don't know how many episodes ago. You'll have to curb all your swearing.
Good thing you told me, because I was just getting to that point.
So we're just putting the oil lines back on. Had a little bit of a long interlude here. I might as well explain while you're watching us wrench, because otherwise you're just watching grass grow. The last number 6 rod bearing, the bolts were loose. In other words, this engine had a rod knock, which I think is another clue as to why it was parked. So we pulled everything apart on the rod, checked the bearings. It's within a thousandths of spec, and on an engine with 70,000 miles on it, I don't feel like that's out of line. If you want to know how thin a thousandth of an inch is, it's less than a hair's width. So on an overall bearing, there may be a little bit of taper in it. The bearing's got some scoring, but none of that is surprising on an engine of this vintage. So we made the executive decision to, well, like I said, we checked the clearance and torque the bolts down properly, and the rod clearance is gone, and it's less than, I'm pretty sure it's less than 1,000ths of an inch under full torque. So we're going to go with it, and I'm pretty confident it's going to be okay. But it's either that or completely pull the engine apart and rebuild it, and I don't think that's necessary at this point. We want to fire it up and see what we've got. It's not like the car is going to be seeing high RPM. It's not like the car is going to be seeing thousands of miles a year. At best, you're lucky if you put a couple hundred miles a year on a car like this. I can tell you that from personal experience with a Model A that I drove. Sorry. No, you're fine. That I drove all summer. So even in that scenario, we only put a few hundred miles on it. So if it knocks, we know where it's coming from. But it's not going to knock. I'm confident of that.
From where you are, can you get that one?
Yep.
I keep turning it, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
Let's be old.
I think it's down on the.
Oh.
Okay, there we go. Let's see if that works. The other ones are still loose, right?
They're tightening now. I mean, they grabbed.
Right. Just don't get them too tight until I get this one started.
Okay.
I had the same problem on the one on the back. Putting these oil lines back on is not fun. I've got a feeling what's going on is it's just a little bit tweaked. There we go. Let's try that.
That's my guess.
I thought I had it. This, whatever that is coming out of the bottom of the steering box is rather annoying. It feels like it's going, but it's not. I think it just caught. Yep, it did. There we go. I just had to push against the nut with my thumb.
Okay.
Having a bad hair day for some reason here. We just crawled out from under the car, and just wanted to demonstrate what I was talking about when Dad and I were putting the bottom end back together there with the oil tubes. So I have one of my hairs here, and just make sure my caliper is 0. So the oil's pump, or the bearing clearance spec is 1.5 thousandths to 2 thousandths. So to give you an idea, here's a human hair. If I can get it in there. That's 1/1000th of an inch. Actually, it's 1/1000th and a half. So if you can see that. So our spec is 1.5 thousandths, which is that, to 2 thousandths, which is a half more. And we're at 3, and that was with the bearing not completely torqued down. So we got out our handy dandy Oakland Pontiac shop manual, 1926 to 1929. And the spec is right here in the book. I don't know if you can see that. Right there. 0.0015 to 0.002. So a human hair is 2 thousandths. That's how tight the bearing clearances are on this. So we were at 3 with the bearing cap not completely torqued down, and I'm comfortable with that. So I checked it using plastic gauge. Oh, my plastic gauge is all gone, but you can see a little bit of it right here. There's just a little teeny bit of plastic gauge left. It's just a very small little plastic tube, and what you do is you put that into the bearing and you tighten it down and it flattens out, and then you measure it with this little scale right here, and you can see it smushes out to about that thick if it's 1/1000th, that thick at 1.5, that thick at 2 thousandths, and that thick at 3 thousandths. So we were at 3 with it not completely torqued down. That's less than a human hair clearance. So am I comfortable with that on this engine with 70,000 miles? Absolutely. I'm very comfortable with that. But we had another problem, and when I torqued it down, the engine got tight, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. It took me a little while. And I think what was going on was the rod cap and the rod were not lining up 100%, because the rod, where the rod bolt goes through, was just a bit worn from that rod bolt being loose. And so Dad and I worked together on it. He cranked the engine over, and I just torqued it a little bit, and he cranked it, and he torqued it a little bit, and I cranked it, and he torqued it a little bit, and he cranked it. And the tight spot that we were getting in the engine is gone, because what that was doing was every time he would crank it, it would just allow that rod cap, before it was torqued down completely, to recenter on the journal and line up with the rod itself. So I want to make sure that I put it on the right way, because there's a right way and a wrong way. I'm 90% sure I put the notch over to the driver's side where it needs to be, and I'm pretty sure I did, but I'm getting really, really tired and I need to double check myself. It's most definitely the challenge of working on a car of this vintage. Nothing is going to be perfect. It's a matter of the compromise, what you can live with, and that's a lot based on experience. If we were to have to go through this entire engine, we're going to spend $8,000 or more to have somebody else rebuild it. Not quite as much if I do it, but there's still things I can't do. So for example, Oakland recommended back in the day that if a connecting rod was worn, just buy a new connecting rod and put it in. Of course, you had to mic the crankshaft and so forth, but we don't have that option available to us. So we would have to either get the rods machined to accept some kind of a more modern bearing, if we could find one, or get somebody to re-babbitt the bearing and go through the process of pouring babbitt, and then the machining processes and the honing processes to get that to be at the right clearance. Is it ideal? No. But again, we're not talking about a car that's going to see thousands and thousands of miles a year. I mean, this car was on the road for 20 years and had 70,000 miles on it. And from experience, as I said before, having had a 31 Ford Model A, best we ever did was 200 or 300 miles in a season, and some years we never even put that on it in the 10 years we had it. So you can see how quickly in the lifetime of a car you're only going to put a couple thousand miles on it. So we're keeping that in mind. We're not going to be out hot rodding it. We're not going to be out flooring it, running it hard. We're going to be running it very, very easy. And the thing is, if for some reason it does develop a knock when we fire it up, we know exactly what it is. We know what to do. We got to pull the motor and we'll get it fixed. But based on my experience, I feel pretty comfortable with where we're at. considering the wear on this motor and so forth. But again, we had valve issues. For those who haven't seen the earlier episodes, we had exhaust valves were all shot. So we had multiple issues, and we know it had to have had a knock in number 6 cylinder. Probably not a severe knock, but my guess is those combinations of things were why when we found Grandpa's or great-grandpa's diary, were probably why the car was brought back from Copper City and parked and never driven again. It needed some work, some deep work, which may be why my grandfather never did anything with it. Maybe he knew. My question to my dad was, if Grandpa knew it had a rod knock, which he had to have, or known there was a knock in it somewhere, not necessarily a rod knock, but a knock in the engine, why did he keep oiling the cylinders and turning it over? Did he have in mind that someday maybe he was going to fix it up? None of us know. He never talked about it. We will never know. We don't know why he never talked about the car, other than the fact that he owned it and it was out there in the garage. But he was religious about pouring oil down the cylinders and turning the motor over every year. So, all right, that's going to do it for this episode. I'm bushed, I'm beat, I'm filthy, I'm like been a pig rolling around on the floor. It was great to work with Dad today. We got a lot done, made a lot of good decisions. Next step, going to be touching up that oil pan and getting those screens put in and getting it put on the car and priming the oil system and making sure that we have good oil pressure and good oil flow throughout the engine. So that's a step in the right direction. So a ways to go yet, but hopefully in the next couple weeks we get that done. All right, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do, as I mentioned. Hit the bell so you receive those notifications. We're on Facebook and Instagram /mykarshop. There's a lot going on here. 70 Challenger Fabrication Project, 47 Ford Hot Rod Project, 70 Forsyth Duster Drag Car Restoration Preservation, 69 Dodge Charger, that's my son's, my 68 Dodge Dart Pro Street. I've got a nice 4-wheel drive Dodge pickup that we're doing a lot of work on. We got the 73 Swinger here, we got the 74 Swinger back there, and there's cars I'm probably forgetting about. So if you like automotive work and you like what we're doing on the Oakland, check out all the other stuff. There's over 150 episodes of work. Everything from paint work to body work to sheet metal work to fabrication to engine work to... We just got stuff. There's a lot of stuff. Hope you enjoy the channel. Check it out. Rock on, guys.